We're going to start off in Australia because an Indigenous politician, well, she's caused a stir overnight after she decided to heckle King Charles following a speech at Parliament House in the capital, Canberra.
Independent Senator Lidia Thorpe accused the royal family of committing genocide, saying the monarch should answer for the thousands of massacre sites throughout the country. Well, let's take a listen to the intervention.
Give us our land back. Give us what you stole from us. Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people. You destroyed our land. Give us a genocide. This is not your land. This is not your land. You are not my kids. You are not our kids.
What a performance, eh? But she does have previous. She likes to make a spectacle of herself. Let's watch this.
Sovereign Lidia Thorpe, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and I bear true allegiance to the colonising Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Senator Thorpe.
You're not a senator if you don't do it.
It's all a bit student union, isn't it?
What is it about politicians called Thorpe ending up embarrassing themselves? Well, let's get the thoughts of royal broadcaster and historian Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, because Rafe, this particular independent senator had some big charges to lay at the king. Is he responsible for genocide?
Well, happy Trafalgar Day to you both, first and foremost. Look, we need to separate two things here, and I'm glad you showed that other clip because Senator Liz Thorpe is a thoroughly obnoxious politician. You know, it's a very crowded field, but she has the gold medal for being the most ludicrous and embarrassing politician in the Commonwealth. She's used the F word in the Senate many times. She's lain down in front of lorries. She's attacked funding of the police. She was thrown to the ground in the rain by the police for trying to shut down the free speech of a gender-critical movement in Canberra as well. So let's just ignore her because I think she brings shame and embarrassment on the whole argument. The separate argument, of course, is about the Aboriginal peoples. And the first thing to say is, no, look, there is nobody who is more sympathetic and understanding to the cause of Aborigines than King Charles himself. I mean, you know, for decades, the King, as Prince of Wales, has had, you know, huge respect and empathy for all of his Indigenous subjects, you know, whatever the realm we're talking about. So he doesn't deserve to be treated this way. Secondly, no one is denying, the Australian government and the monarchy, that Aborigines were indeed treated appallingly after colonisation, and it would be absolutely wrong to pretend that that didn't happen, and no one denies that, and the Australian government has done a huge amount to try to make amends and improve the lot of Australians. But let's be clear, British colonisation was the best thing to happen to Aborigines. And let's also let's finally burst this fantasy bubble that life in Australia before the British arrived was some sort of, idyllic nirvana. Before the British arrived, Australia was a vast, desolate landmass. The Aborigine population was only several 100,000, and they were living in a Paleolithic Stone Age culture that hadn't changed for thousands of years. And their life was violent, and it was brutal, and it was short. And I really mean it was violent, brutal, and short. The Aborigines were always at war with each other. There's a historian called Geoffrey Blaney, and he's shown that in parts of Australia, the annual death rate of Aborigines through warfare was equivalent to the Japanese death rate in the Second World War. I mean, the landscape was literally strewn with human bones, and Aboriginal tribes were exterminated in nocturnal attacks by other rival tribes. And even, Steven Pinker, the professor at Harvard University, has shown that life in pre-colonial states was far more violent and far more harsh than in post-colonial states.
Rafe, from an objective point of view, it's easy to see how the quality of life for someone living in a country that is sort of subsistence living in tribal warfare is lower than the quality of life of someone living in a developed country, of course. But there is the question of consent and the difficult question of countries that are developed with technology and arms and germs and steel, arriving in a place that has none of those advantages, and sort of the power imbalance that then ensues, the way in which people are treated. It's almost like this sort of different level of... you could sort of imagine an alien invasion coming down with superior technology and then telling us we can't live our lives in the way that we'd gone before. And they might say, but, well, we lived to 1,050 and you only lived to 80-odd. And yet I think we'd feel fairly aggrieved.
But that's the story of human existence, isn't it? When the Romans came to Britain, it was much the same thing. I don't think anybody today would suggest that the Roman Empire coming to Britain wasn't a force for good on the balance. Absolutely. I mean, there were horrific things happened to the ancient Britons. No one's going to deny the atrocities that occurred to the native peoples in North America. No one's going to deny that appalling things happened in Australia too. But on the balance, I think that you can clearly see that the Aborigines have actually benefited from the arrival. I mean, you mentioned life expectancy. For thousands of years, life expectancy was only 40. It has doubled since then, or almost doubled. It's now 70 to 75 years.
Rafe, what does
thanks to colonization. But one more point if I can just make.
Sure, very quickly,
with the Maoris, we get the same argument from the Maoris. The Maoris only arrived in New Zealand in the 1300s, and they also committed genocide against the real indigenous population of one of the islands there in New Zealand too. This is human nature and human history. Rather than going back into the past and lamenting about all of this, we should recognise it and acknowledge it, as the royal family has done, as the Australian government has done, and they've tried to make amends. But there's nothing healthy about this constant need to have a sense of victim status, from BLM to the Aboriginal campaigners like Lidia Thorpe.
Is there not a long-term problem here, though? I don't know about Lidia Thorpe's support, but I imagine she probably has quite a lot of support among younger generations, Gen Z. I can imagine, a lot of them saying, yes, Queen, as she, started that, made that spectacle of herself in the Parliament there. What should the King do, looking to the future, to try and stop that sentiment growing, to secure his place in the Constitution, really?
It's hard to see what more the King can do than he hasn't already done. I mean, this is the point, and it's a shame that not enough attention is given to the huge efforts made by the royal family. I mean, the relationship the King has, for example, with the Maori is so warm. In North America, the Native American populations of North America have treaties with the King, with the British monarchy, and that strong bond there is so important to many native tribes. There are 3 chapels royal in Canada, and they're all Mohawk chapels because they respect that connection so much. This is all about education and understanding that the royal family are not an enemy of the Aboriginal peoples. In many ways, they're their greatest friends, and it was often the tribes who would appeal to the King or the Queen, including Queen Victoria, for assistance when they felt mistreated by the government.
I think that is actually a very important point to make. I mean, by the time the Brits arrived, by the time Captain Cook turned up at Botany Bay, Parliament was sovereign rather than the Crown. This was post the Glorious Revolution. This was... the King didn't have ultimate authority over what happened within his dominions or indeed his empire. But Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, thank you so much for talking us through what is a fascinating bump in the road in the King's royal tour down under.